Hello everybody and welcome to a new edition of Strange Times. As everybody knows, we are living through very strange times and we need to understand things better, and for that reason we created this podcast that starts with a confusion. We feature scholars talking not really about what they know, but mostly they will be discussing what they are confused about. Some of you have said that last time we were a bit all over the place. We promise no less this time. So for those of you, the strangers out there in the other side of this camera, I would like you to welcome today's guest. Let's see if we make it work. Jochem Rinsma and Blaise. Blaise, how do I pronounce your last name?
Truong-Loï.
Wait, now you can speak.
Oh, sorry. Truong-Loï, if you pronounce it.
Truong-Loï.
Truong-Loï, yeah, but you can spell it the way you want.
Okay, amazing. I tried my best. I hope it was more or less acceptable.
You can call me Biagio in Italiano if you want.
Biagio?
Biagio is
It's the Italian
version of Blaise. So, yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. And you, Jochem, how are you? All good?
I'm doing okay. Yeah. I thought you were talking about my Italian name. It's also it's Gioacchino.
Gioacchino, okay. Yeah. And I don't think I have an Italian name, by the way.
It just is.
Blaise, maybe can you turn off that light over there because it's a bit weird. Yeah, if I pass through all of the back, and in the meantime we will start chatting with Jochem. Jochem, sure. What are you confused about?
Well,
no, the other one.
This one.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
There we go. And sorry, people, we're almost there.
The lamp. There you go. This is
nice.
a far much better lighting.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. So I prepared some notes on my phone. I need to be closer to the microphone.
You have to be.
So yeah, I prepared something on my phone first, so I could read it out, make it very precise.
Okay.
And then we can start discussing it.
I like people that come with a precise confusion. No bullshit here. Come on.
So
we like that.
And plus, it's going to be a particularly confusing confusion if you don't know, especially economics, which I'm with two people who know some things.
I'm a lawyer by training, but I can happily jump in. Be confused about economics.
I would love that. So what I put down is so previous global reserve currencies relied on its issuer lending its currency abroad and spending these loans on the issuer's goods, right? So you have countries spending the hegemon's currency to buy the hegemon's goods, right?
Hegemons means the country that is the biggest empire, to put it simply.
And in this case, it would be the issuer of the global reserve currency.
Okay.
Yeah. So, however, since the gold convertibility was suspended, the dollar's dominance relies on the opposite. It relies on the U.S. spending on foreign goods and foreigners lending to the U.S.
Okay.
So, how can a currency be dominant in both systems? Why if they're polar opposites in this fundamental way, and maybe it isn't fundamental, why is it still dominant just like the sterling was, or the Dutch guilder? And then the additional question was, is the nature and effect of the dollar's dominance fundamentally different from the dominance of previous currencies? So, and honestly, I'm very confused about this, and it's causing particular chaos at the moment. So
yeah. We are with two historians, so hopefully we can start to unravel this. When the gold standard exploded, you mentioned that, but it exploded like over time, right? In several occasions.
Yeah. So actually, that's funny you mentioned that because that was going to go to my strange fact, or however you call it at the end.
Okay. We were going to go to there at the end.
Yeah.
Tell me now, how would you pose this very same question in a simple manner for somebody who doesn't know what reserve currency is? Like, what you're confused about all of this?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Narrow it down for dummies.
Do you think you could do that?
Maybe I can try. Like, why does everybody in the world wants dollars, whereas nobody wants American goods and American wants foreign goods.
That's a great way to frame it. But Blaise, you came to the wrong person because I'm Argentinian. We love dollars. we don't even ask this
you
question.
love dollars. No, but that's a precise point. You love dollars, but maybe you love more Japanese cars and
True.
Yeah.
Chinese clothes.
The thing is, our economy is so protectionist, and the thing is also we used to print so much money that in the end people just know that the dollar brings no inflation, which is a premise that we all know now is not really the case,
Right.
correct? So we will be tied to the US inflation in this case. But at the time for Argentina, that meant still a better deal than whatever is happening right now.
Right. But I think it is a valuable way of putting it, right? Because I think in Argentina's example is particularly stark, where it's a country that does have exports, obviously, but it relies very much on consumer spending, which is the same in the U.S. And ultimately, they buy Chinese goods, Japanese goods, because Argentina can produce a lot on its own, but fundamentally not like. You don't produce cars. You don't produce.
No, we do produce cars. Huh? Also,
you're part of the global value chain.
With Brazil, we have a very big industry. But in the past, there was this famous thing called Régimen de Tierra del Fuego, which means Tierra del Fuego regime. Tierra del Fuego is really far away, guys. If you don't know where it is, and the place was basically. There was this regulation that forced every company that want to be in Argentina to produce in Tierra del Fuego, but they were just basically assembling it and then redistributing it throughout the country with trucks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you will end up paying a computer incredibly expensive. So then this is why everybody was like, if you're going abroad, bring me a computer. Now this is no more longer the case after Milei opened the whole economy, but yeah, so this is how it goes for closed economies.
No, it's actually super interesting that you mentioned that now. We're already kind of untangling confusion a little bit here, because I think one of the key ideas we have to contend with is that the dollar's dominance is, despite this seeming contradiction, this paradox, is actually fundamentally reliant on, and this is exemplified in your case, which is that in the Argentinian case, even though you help produce cars for South America and you produce some of the parts, ultimately the profits made from the sale is mostly driven back to the holders of the companies, which have let's say the IP, the ownership over the product itself, if that makes sense. And
do you think that I don't follow?
No, it's in so the factories aren't owned by Argentinians necessarily, right?
No,
exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
But it's not really a fabric, right? You're just coming here to assemble things. Doesn't seem like a very promising strategy, anyway.
Sure.
But it definitely it's a great question, like dollar dominance, if they don't really produce the things that everybody wants, other than weapons, maybe.
That's changing a lot too, isn't it?
So Blaise, what are you confused about?
I think my confusion is much more straightforward. Like, there's so many things I'm confused about. Like, starting from why did Italy not qualify for a World Cup? In the third time in a row. But I don't want to be rude.
You're touching a very sensible fiber here for the audience.
No, I think that my main confusion is I had the feeling back in 2020, 2021 that COVID would change many things in the world, and eventually I have the feeling that it has not.
Like, it made us crazier for a change, I think.
Yeah, but I don't know. At least in France, I'm French. We talked about like le monde d'après, so the world after COVID, and everybody promised it would be so different. Like, paying much attention to public services, to hospital, to education, to medical care, everything.
I thought that in the exact moment when we did the Imagine video with all the famous guys, I thought that was the top worst moment, and I said, there's no coming back from this.
Yeah.
But indeed, like, we did so many strange things during that time of COVID, and I think it really broke down people's relationship with the truth as well. And now any piece of information is as good as any other. And probably this is why I think that it makes sense that we spend a lot of time studying, and also we can acknowledge, there's a limit to the things we can know, and then we need to also engage with society in a way that, acknowledge that this is a boundary to what we can do with our time.
Yeah, but I would say, like, I had the feeling that if, for instance, Trump was elected before the COVID crisis broke out. Like, he was elected in late 2016, early 2017. Mm-hmm. I think that from a general point of view, like, he had a terrible management of the COVID crisis. I thought that nobody could survive to that afterwards, So, okay, he lost against Biden in 2020, 2021, but afterwards he was re-elected for a second mandate. Like, we had the far right, which was surging in all European countries before COVID. I don't know. I thought that maybe, after that it would have changed a lot. People would have not understood, but would have realized that maybe there were other priorities as immigration, Islam, and anything that maybe environmental issues mattered more than they thought previously before the pandemics broke out and everything. After two lockdowns, I thought that maybe it would have been different, And I really had the feeling for one of the very first time in my life to live a historical moment. And really a breakaway, like.
I have so many questions already because this brings me to the point that I wanted to discuss with you too, because you study economic history, more or less the same periods, correct?
Actually,
no.
Well,
you study after war.
I'm like a late 20th century, and
I'm a late 19th century.
Yeah.
Maybe, Jochem, you can tell a little bit what's your research interest, because I think what we're going to try to make sense now is how was the world order that we are living in? I don't know if to say living in, because of course this is getting destroyed in a sense, but how did it got built? So yeah, Jochem, maybe you can start by sharing.
Yeah, sure. And then we connected to the whole idea of like change, right? Because I think in the periods we study, people probably did expect a lot of change, and in some cases it did happen.
But what was your period again?
My period is I started in about 1968.
Okay.
And that goes all the way until the late 80s or mid 90s. It's kind of, that's like the conservative and the, let's say, the
Washington Consensus started.
Yeah, basically, yeah, exactly.
And you, Blaise, what's your period?
I'm working on the late 19th century, so let's say it starts from the 1860s, 1870s, so the 4-5 decades before the outbreak of First World War.
Okay, so still, this will help us to get a picture of why people were going crazy even before COVID. What happened? Because I guess at some point we were pretty happy with this liberal order that we built, right?
Some people were, for sure. Yeah.
Go ahead.
But as an Argentinian, you know that a lot of Argentines were very happy, I guess. Depending on the period of time.
Depending on the period, yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess I don't think Argentina is a good example because we are a crazy outlier in many things. But
sure.
Overall, in the rest of the world, I wonder.
Especially in the Western, let's especially we can say that I think for the North Atlantic world, at least, right? And maybe you can add Japan and South Korea on that, I suppose. So, what the...
How did this become a false promise in the first place? Was there ever a promise to begin with? Because you, Blaise, you just say, I feel like I'm living a historical moment.
Yeah.
But isn't it the case that all moments are historical moments?
Obviously.
In a way? And we don't see history in the making.
Yeah,
Probably the next change is already on the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why I'm confused about the COVID crisis, because I had this weird feeling that I was living really a historical moment in the sense that all moments are historical, but I had the feeling that I was living a moment that would create a caesura in history. Like there was going to be an before and an after, and eventually there is a huge continuity before and after the COVID crisis.
What's interesting about that is I think breaks are never clean, if that makes sense. But I suppose, like, because I think we are living in a different era.
Yeah, well,
just not the era you imagine we imagined it would be, right? And I think that's, but I think we can look to somewhat to history in that sense. Spanish flu, although people say that had a more limited impact than you would have thought, given the death toll, right?
Yeah, no,
but I mean, Blaise, what happened when the war period started? Like, how would you describe the period that you study in terms of economics?
The late 19th century, you mean?
Yes, the configurations that were created and how did this came about to be in this way.
Okay, this is very...
Summarize your thesis in 3 minutes for TikTok.
This was not my thesis. This is like the main historical configuration in which the topic I'm studying fits in. So,
that's the context.
Yeah. Let's say that very broadly speaking, it was a period of economic globalization. Economic historians tend to call it the first globalization. So it's something that early modern historians really despise, because they say that, okay, in the end, globalization started, with the very end of the 15th century. But what is sure is that the economic interconnectedness of the world dramatically increased in that period, starting from the 1870s, and a huge surge for that globalization was imperial growth of the UK, of course, of France, but also of Germany in the later part of the period, of the US starting from the 1890s, and also from Japan.
And what made the interconnectedness increase? You would say like more planes, something like that. What was the main technology outbreak that brought?
Telegraph.
Wow.
Yeah. You had a global interconnection of the world that arrived in that period, and from the first time in history, it was possible to have, for instance, from what I'm studying, I'm like economic and financial historian, so you could have nearly live information about stock prices in New York, in Paris, thanks to the telegraph.
Yeah.
So you had this interconnection, and afterwards, from the topic I'm studying, which is financial history and public indebtedness and so on, interconnectedness increased because a growing number of states started borrowing on financial markets, on international financial markets, and so they became indebted towards French, British, German or American creditors.
And the debt was primarily denominated in pound, I imagine, right?
Yes, for the most part, but also in franc, in French franc.
Okay.
And in dollars and in Deutschmarks.
Okay. Yeah.
But the thing is,
really,
all this money were pegged to gold.
Right.
So there was a fixed exchange rates between them.
Yeah, that didn't end up well, I guess. But also in that time, interconnectedness was not so... because today we see war and we see, supply chains, they explode. And now we are in this big trouble where we don't really know what's being cooked in the underlying pipes of the financial system. I think that markets at this moment are not fully reacting to the disruption that this interconnectedness, to the level that it reached in modern times, is happening. So I guess what happened when the war broke out in that period? Well,
many people for decades talked about the First World War as a moment of deglobalization, But in the same time, it's quite paradoxical, given that the First World War was very global in essence. So it created another kind of globalization, with soldiers which came to fight in Europe, and they came from North Africa, from Indochina, from all over the world, from Australia.
Yeah.
So what happened at an economic standpoint was that basically there was a huge freedom of capital mobility in the last years before the war, and this suddenly stopped at the outbreak of First World War, because what became suddenly very important was financing the war.
Right.
So all the savings that were invested in Ottoman public debt, that were invested in maybe Argentinian mines or Argentinian public debt, though it was very risky, at the times, all the savings, they suddenly become mobilized for financing the war. So that's what dramatically changed.
I'm not a historian, so I cannot help to do the parallels with the time that we are living in, also in Europe. Like, okay, savings. You guys have savings, right? In Europe, we need to, bring them to finance security, it's called right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that it's inevitable to see the resemblances.
Yeah, for sure. And like in England, in France, in Germany, you had these huge propaganda campaigns that aimed at targeting small savers, and they were like, okay, you have francs, you have sterling pounds that you store just sous votre oreiller, so you just under your pillow or something like this. Invest it, invest it to protect the nation. Help create bullets, help create tanks, help create uniforms, rifles, and everything.
So what these people would do is they would buy specifically like state bonds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And this was made possible because there had been a financial acculturation in a way in the previous decades. Mass investment was not something unknown for people in 1914. At the moment, there were already millions of people who invested in the French public debt before the outbreak of the First World War. What changed was that a lot of people also exported their savings, exported the capital in other countries, like the Ottoman Empire, as I say, like China, US, Russia. Of course, a lot of French people had invested in the Russian public debt, and all these savings they suddenly came back home, so that they could be invested in the national public debt to fund war expenses.
So it was a period of deglobalization then, the post World War I.
Financially speaking, maybe
during the World War.
But also, all this saving, all this money that the French state took, it was also invested in the US to buy supplies from the American or from Argentina to have meat, that came for feeding the French army. So,
I mean, our virtue was always to stay away from wars.
Yeah.
But now Milei, he seems to be changing his mind. It seems it's a good idea to be siding with Israel, And we're like, man, this is not us,
Does he want to send a boat to the strait to blockade it?
I think he was sending something, and I don't know. I didn't even know we had these boats, but
yeah.
So then, World War I ends. We have markets booming, 30s crisis, right? And then World War II again. Same phenomenon happens, I guess. Not in the same fashion.
Yeah, not in the same fashion. But yes, I mean, from the topic you want to talk about today, which is today's world was creating, how did we eventually get where we are? I think that the interwar period for many historians is very important because after the First World War, after that global heyday of capitalism was put into pieces by the First World War, many people started to think that what eventually created the conditions for the First World War was a lack of coordination, between the different national economies in the world, and that was what was needed was kind of a central institution to coordinate national economies at a global scale, and that was the creation of the League of Nations. That is now considered as a failure because it failed to prevent the burst of the Second World War. But from an economic perspective, it was absolutely key in the rise of global economic governance. And that's what that foreshadowed the IMF and the World Bank after Second World War.
Okay. Interesting. Then we jump in quickly to. I'm rushing through history, but it's fine.
It's always like that.
At some point we had to do it, right? World War II ends. There's this configuration that starts to appear in the inter-war period, as you say. But then what I would. This is total amateurish history, but you can correct me, guys. That's fine.
Let's hear it.
Cold War is the next event that we will have in sight, right? So I guess that the period in between the World War II and Cold War was, okay, these fellows in Latin America and Asia and everywhere that is not the US, you better not be communists. And in Argentina, that was translated into ferocious dictatorship, which happens in the same way throughout the rest of Latin America.
Yeah.
So I think that's more or less the period that you studied.
Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah.
Okay.
Although I suppose we should say that in the Latin American case, it's particularly a problem by like starting in the mid '60s, because there was a period. Okay, there are exceptions. Obviously, Guatemala, for example, started out already after the Arbenz in a pretty brutal dictatorship. But in general, the Peronistas and the conservatives were kind of trading power in that initial Cold War period and that sort of thing.
The Peronist government was definitely not a cruent dictatorship like the rest.
Exactly.
Some of my colleagues in Argentina will hear this and will be like, what are you talking about? Yeah. But the truth is, it was not a hardcore dictatorship as others.
Yeah. And especially after Perón had to leave. Right.
I think things got nasty in the 70s because
exactly.
It's funny that we end up talking about Peronism. I wasn't intending to, but basically the history of the guy is they make a coup d'etat, then he comes to power with a group of united generals, and then they give him a radio show,
right? Yep.
And the guy was talking from the Ministry of Work to workers every day. They have like an open frequency, same as Radio Caballo. And then one day they say, okay, this guy seems to be getting too popular, so they bring him to an island, same as it happens with Napoleon and other big figures, when they go to jail, they send them to an island, Martin Garcia. And historians say that then he started writing letters to his wife, I look forward to the day that we're going to be together. Like the guy pictured himself retiring, more or less. He would never expect to become Perón. And suddenly, all the gauchos got angry because, where's my podcast? They couldn't listen to the radio, and then they figured out Perón was in jail. So the gauchos are like the cowboys, but from Argentina. So all the people from the periphery started coming, and the fancy people in the downtown of Buenos Aires have never seen such thing. They basically started washing their feet in Plaza de Mayo, and on 17th of October, it was very warm. So all the classes from the rich people were horrified about this phenomenon. But it was so many people that the myth is that this is the day of the Peronist loyalty. They had to fly Perón in a plane. He goes out of the balcony, does the gesture, go home, and then he gets elected president, like for a decade. And then at some point he gets into a fight with the Catholic Church. They try to kick him out of the government. Then people tries to replicate the same phenomenon. They go to the public square and they get bombarded in 1955 by their own military. And that's where the crazy dictatorship starts, and that's where the really neoliberal consensus starts to be built.
Right.
It's assembling the state of, would you say, like the social protections guarantees that the Peronist government did. It was a slow process. And then Perón goes to Madrid, to a place called Puerta de Hierro. And he was a conservative guy, like you said, so not really a left-wing communist. And he starts catering to the interests of the revolutionary movements, making them believe that, if he comes back, he will do the revolution. But then when he comes back, he's old. He has at his right hand a guy called López Rega, which is similar to, these shady figures like the Rasputin of the era, and the guy that will do black magic. So I think this guy orchestrated some scheme over which Perón landed in a different airport. And then the Montoneros, who were putting bombs for him to return, got massacred in the airport.
Okay.
So at that point, the Montoneros felt betrayed, and they kept doing terrorism
Yeah.
And then Argentinian society said, okay, there's no way for this to end. With Perón or without Perón, this is going to be chaos. We need a serious dictatorship. And that's how the Argentinian society came to a consensus that the military coup was needed. So this is why the theories of the two demons, we call them, like, oh no, the society was trapped between innocent bombing terrorists and military guys, it's not really accurate. But it's in this period where all the really hardcore neoliberal consensus starts to appear. In the 70s onwards. In the 90s, it becomes crazy, of course.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I told a full.
No,
story.
it's great. I think we can kind of come back to some things we were speaking about because so it first of all shows that after the telegraph, the radio was the big thing, right?
This
and now
was
it's the podcast.
by the radio.
No, but it's true. It's true.
That's the interwar era, actually.
And it's in the interwar era.
Yeah,
absolutely. But then it becomes globalized, right?
Yeah, but I think that in the 1950s, 1960s, it's more TV, which becomes like.
Well, TV especially in the United States, and Western Europe for sure. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be able to comment on like TV in Argentina, but
tell me what happened in the world.
In the world?
Yeah.
And TV?
No, in general with these changes.
Well, I think, to come back to the radio thing, for example, I think it shows, and it'd be interesting to hear what you think about in economic terms, but the way I think about it is more like this sort of communication, vastly increased state power. Right? And the ability to generate mass movements. And that's why it's very important for the 30s. Because the Nazis, the Soviet Union, the Italian, the fascism, but it's totally global. I mean, Vargas's last Getúlio Vargas, the Perón of Brazil, one might say, or maybe Perón was the Vargas of Argentina, but anyway, very similar type of let's call them strongmen people. Were able to capture society and really. For the first time globally make a sort of modern state and go on a path of like industrialization, independent industrialization of the West. So, and then we're really going, all these processes are very happening during Blaise's time, but by the time I'm studying, that's sort of like the context, right? But they don't get as far as Western Europe, North America do, or Japan, right?
Not so liberal. You would say?
Oh well, no. I would say that
in economic terms,
they're able to. A lot of countries are able to produce basic manufactured goods, but never advanced, or not never. Obviously, now it's different, but back then, and also the capital goods necessary to build these factories to produce those goods. It's all owned by, a lot of it's owned by Western companies, right?
Okay.
So that's sort of like the situation, let's say globally after the war.
So basically doing raw materials, that story.
And
Latin America doing raw materials, the companies being somewhere else.
And trying not to just do that, but it doesn't always go the best.
Yeah.
But
And Jochem, I have this question because you study left-wing think tanks.
Yes.
Right? How they contributed to shaping somehow the world order.
Governance.
Governance.
No.
How much we can blame George Soros?
Oh.
Which is the preferred talking point of the right-wing podcast.
that is a future dissertation for sure. It's interesting. Soros doesn't come up in my stuff because it's just too early, basically, for him to have massive influence. Although I'm still open to seeing it. But interestingly enough, the person I study, for example, she wanted to make, for example, a program in the UNRISD, which was it still exists. It's a development institute within the UN, but it has like no budget basically. So the only budget it gets is from like the Swedish trade unions and some like-minded trade unions basically. And so she has to get independent funding for this project she wants to do in that institute. And where does she go? She goes to, I found out, the other day that she goes to the Rockefellers.
Really?
So, and likely, what I'm trying to say is likely people like Soros, but also his predecessors, the Rothschilds, etc. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can blame them. You can probably blame them for not making the world a bit better even, because they weren't supporting the person I study, for example. But I'm biased, so.
most certainly the right wing will blame them for making the world more like probably we want, in a way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But so do you think, how influential were they, left-wing think tanks?
Well, that's a good question. In the period that I study, the paradox is, it's not really a paradox, I suppose. It's, so first of all, I have to preface that I study independent left-wing think tanks. So that means I don't study party political ones. That's because what my interest is studying politics by different means, basically, and beyond the nation state. And on that level, you know, I mean, part of the thing is that a lot of things are really difficult to do in the UN. There's so many veto points, you know. You don't just win an election and you can just pass all your reforms. So in the case that I'm studying right now, because there's still half of the timeline I simply don't know. There was this thing called the New International Economic Order, basically a set of proposals by Global South countries to reform trade. And what they wanted was, well, for example, commodity agreements. So the idea is that part of the reason developing countries, so global southern countries, cannot move up the value chain is because the tendency of commodity prices, like primary goods, like iron, for example, tends to go down relative to finished manufacturers. So shoes, like nice Nikes or whatever.
Yeah.
And so the point is that we need to stabilize prices, keep them, let's say, artificially, quote unquote, high. And that way you can start reliably making income in order to start investing in higher value added goods, basically. And so this was a project that it felt like it was going somewhere in the 70s.
Okay.
As in, there were a lot of meetings, you know, a lot of, yeah, I mean, that's really it. A lot of meetings, a lot of speeches.
So it was measured in meetings.
I think, I mean, it seems this way because the thing is, so ultimately the actual, so for example, commodity agreements, I think there's like a bauxite agreements that like, that is agreed at some point, but then that actually just dissolves by like the late 80s. And then there's two other goods, I cannot remember what they were, but they never really get off the ground. And so what I'm trying to say basically is then these countries that are trying to get these agreements, for example, they are in contact with the people I study. For example, they hold like a conference in first Jamaica, then Tanzania the year after, already in a period in which the NIEO is not looking good. It's the late 70s, right before Reagan comes in. So measured in terms of who they get to come in contact with, they were in contact with very visible people who said a lot of big things, big dreams. But the problem is that they couldn't sustain the leverage to make, especially the US, consent to changing a whole bunch of trade rules in the way they wanted to. And ultimately, who had the leverage was the US because, well, the interest rate hike of 1979, right? The Volcker shock.
Yeah.
Causing interest rates to go up for the US dollars, and what's denominated in US dollars? Third world debt. So debt spikes like crazy. And all of a sudden these states do not look solvent at all. And investors pull out, right? And then you get a run on all their currencies, making their purchasing power completely useless. And voila, the coalition, which was having a very hard time agreeing amongst themselves and making the US come along with them, that coalition is now completely, turned over, essentially. And so what I'm trying to say is they were in contact with these really well-known people that we still know today, in Nyerere, Michael Manley. But yeah, they were just on the wrong side ultimately.
So Blaise, you wanted to say something?
No, yeah, just wanted to say that the movement for a new international economic order that Jochem just mentioned actually had some successes, with
it did have a few.
With the United Nations statement of 1974, the two declarations and
But those were the thing about those is that they're declarations to get the ball rolling. What they wanted like soft law to start legalizing their ideas. But the problem is that those principles that they wanted never came into actual agreements.
Yeah.
So transfer of technology, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're right on to mention that it's not complete failure. So, for example, today's law of the sea is largely a function of the new international economic order. Because what countries in the global south wanted was sovereignty over their territory, and what the U.S. could agree on, for example, is like your exclusive economic zone.
What do you call the you said new economic order?
New international economic order, or the NEO.
Okay, I guess that's a technical term in historical.
It's what they called it at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did it look like in ideal terms then?
Ooh, which is another fun one because there were so many countries. It was called the Group of 77, 77 different Global South countries. And there were different dividing lines between the different blocks. So some were like Mexico at the time, which I think would have included Argentina at the time, actually. But basically the more liberal end of the Global South spectrum.
They got together in the UN?
Yes.
Or they built an ad hoc group?
No, it doesn't have legal... I'm sorry again?
No, they managed to get the creation in 1964 of the UN.
UNCTAD?
UNCTAD, yeah.
Yeah. So the Group of 77 comes out at the same time as UNCTAD, but basically, so Group of 77 is a coalition of the Global South countries, as I was saying, which. I was talking to my lawyer friend, and I think he told me it doesn't actually have legal personality, but it's in effect a coalition of countries, right? Very diverse. 77 countries is a lot. And then UNCTAD is the forum in which exactly they want to discuss these things to make it UN binding. So, but the US is also in there, the Nordic countries, etc. Everybody. It's a UN agency.
Yeah.
And. So what different types of ideas do they have? So Mexico, Argentina, these countries were on the what you might call the liberal end of the NEO, the NIEO. So more about so they all fundamentally agreed that commodity agreements were a good idea. Cartels for commodities.
Okay. In simple terms, that would be we all sell at the same price.
Yes. So cacao, coffee, we're going to agree on a sort of price.
Okay.
Or maybe more like a what's it called? A realm in which it can bounce between.
Yeah, band.
A band, exactly.
It went well?
No, that's exactly no.
Sad story.
Yeah,
Again.
this is sad story.
I can't believe it. Global South again.
Yeah. But then there's also a faction in the NIEO which is much more fixated also on internal redistribution in the countries. So changing the way foreign aid works. So, for example, I think super profits made by global North countries on things they're selling to the global South would be like taxed, and then that would go into a common fund.
Man, this sounds like a great plan.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
the woke left that we will come at this call them at this time got some progress, you would say.
No, well, that's the thing. It was very visible, but it didn't go anywhere in the end.
I mean, none of those things were materialized.
Mostly no. Yeah, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah, in terms of establishing a group.
They managed to reach some agreements with global North countries, in terms of preferential treatments on tariff.
That's an interesting one. Yeah.
For some years, for instance, they had this possibility to escape from the most favorable, the clause of the most favorable nation status. Yeah. Which is that when you reach the favorable treatment, when you sign the free trade agreement with another country, you add necessarily to grant the same advantage to everybody else.
Yeah.
Which means that if you sign a free trade agreement between France and the US, you would have to have the same kind of agreements between France and Senegal. The problem, of course, being that Senegal doesn't have the same structural
Conditions,
economy as the US. And with the movement for a new international economic order, those global South countries managed to reach that possibility for years to escape from this mechanism, so that they could impose some high tariffs on exports, and that their imports was kind of subsidized by global North countries, so that they can accumulate some exchange reserve and finance part of industrialization. So the movement for a new international economic order is, as it succeeded or as it failed, it's a very debated question.
Really? Okay.
On this, I think so. Yeah. I don't know if you read the book by Adam Getachew.
Sure. Yeah.
World Making After Empire, and I mean, a lot of scholars tend to say that clearly it did not meet its full promises, but
yes,
there was some political imagination at that time that is now reinvested by many leftist movements all over the world.
Sure.
And that also some of the solutions that were implemented by that time can be ready-made. You know, that's why you say, like, it seemed a pretty good idea, yeah. But the problem is also that the very unity of the movement of the G77 that Jochem mentioned fall into pieces after the oil shock. You know, because usually the oil countries were part of the G77, and they claimed and they lobbied with Jamaica, which produced bauxite, they produced with Senegal,
so
Tanzania, and everything. But after the oil shock, they began to diverge and have diverging interests, and that's also the reason of the fall of this movement.
I mean, it makes sense if you have one that produces oil, the other corn.
Yeah.
This guy chewing gum. I don't know. It's never good.
No.
It doesn't make sense to negotiate altogether. But of all of these things that you're mentioning, because again, rushing in through history, I hear UN, group of these, group. It seemed like more easy to get together in the previous periods.
In some ways, in the sense that back then there was more of a dominance of the nation state, whereas these days you have. One of the things is just privatization of state services. Yeah. And so you get other players that are multinational corporations, for example. They have to be on board. It's multi-level governance, right? By the way, I wanted to say one thing, which is what's interesting about the NAEO, just to round that off, I think, is that, first of all, it left a very valuable legacy. It's a positive program that I think we can look back to and think, maybe we can change things in that direction. And then I just said that the world is also very different nowadays, right? But there's still something we're saving. But in terms of, the programmatic things they want to accomplish, that's ultimately the things that like what they really wanted, they couldn't get. And even with the most favorable nation status, I remember I was doing my master's thesis looking at the U.S.-Mexican relationship in the late 70s, in the Carter administration. And what was interesting is actually the most favored nation status was used as a carrot by the United States to get Mexico to align more on its positions in the UN, because it's all through the GATT, right? And also the U.S. wanted Mexico to act more through the GATT than UNCTAD, so it could be more in the forum it dominated, rather than UNCTAD, which is dominated by the Global South. And so it's a very messy, right? Because it really depends on which country you're also looking at it. Like if you're looking at it from Tanzania's perspective, it was a disaster, right? Exactly. African socialism. But
and also I think that, to answer your question, like it seemed easier in the past to get together for global South countries and everything. It's also because these countries at that time, they really created in the power of the UN to be a parliament of nations, where the ability of their country to impose their agenda would be sustained by the number. Like they were a group of 77 countries, they were the majority of member states in the UN, where theoretically one country has one vote. You know, unlike the IMF, for instance, where your power in the IMF relies on your contribution to the fund, and the US are by far the largest contributor. So they believe that the UN could be this arena where joining together could provide an opportunity to really implement changes, given that they were like the largest number of countries in the world, and eventually this failure, I think, made also realize that it would be very difficult to implement changes, given that the sheer number would not be enough, given the failure of the new international economic order.
Now, I will ask you one last question before we go to the strangest fact of the week.
Okay, great.
Which is, everybody says that the world got destroyed when we accepted China into the World Trade Organization. That's a common, widespread argument. How would you inform this discussion? Blaise, do you have an opinion on this argument? And why do they say that?
Jochem, maybe like I need to think on this. I really don't know. Like,
Is the question is, did China destroy the World Trade Organization?
No, that people say when China entered, we allowed them. That's what the US says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we allowed them into World Trade Organization, we had this big player that doesn't play by the rules, basically. But isn't that the purpose of the World Trade Organization?
That the rules are managed, and that everyone. But that's actually really interesting because I remember taking a course on EU-US relations, so specifically at the foreign policy level, and it turns out, and my housemate's gonna probably kill me for getting this wrong, but I'm pretty sure that actually the most WTO what's it called? When you sue a country in the body which arbitrates in the WTO. The most claims were made by the EU to the US and vice versa. Actually, and China's obviously huge in that as well. But I mean, they're all like making claims against each other, right? It's part of the course.
Yeah, I find it totally counterintuitive, and I don't know why this argument is always, mentioned. Like, I guess you will be obliged to take more Chinese products, but then also China would be bound by the rules of the WTO.
Right.
But now I think nobody cares about the WTO anymore.
No. Yeah, that's why I don't really know. I mean, that's also why the Trump presidency changed so many things. Everybody's talked about the importance of the rule of law in the new global economic governance, new neoliberal era and everything, and suddenly you have that guy who arrives who's clearly like the most capitalist of all the capitalists, and who doesn't give a shit, about the WTO and all those international institutions and everything. Yeah. And in the end, I mean, I don't know, like, I'm very far from my expertise, from my field of expertise. But
100 years later.
Yeah. Does everything collapse? Like, not necessarily, Like
it's kind of collapsing, but we don't know.
I don't know. Like, I had the feeling that COVID was more a collapsing event, but
it's funny how we circle around with that question.
Yeah.
Huh? Did we got crazy before COVID or after? I think if I may answer with this discussion, the question more or less is, but we were getting crazier from before.
I agree that maybe it's collapsing, but I don't have the feeling that it's collapsing because of the American tariffs. And American tariffs, and that the WTO now is barely nothing, like a empty shell, like
absolutely.
I totally agree that the Trump administration is making the world collapse, with the war in Iran, the capture of Maduro and anything, the threat against Denmark, everything.
The capture of Maduro was celebrated in Latin America.
I know, but what it means about breaking international law, the possibility that they did it again in Iran, so but about WTO, I don't think that it's really the reason why the world is collapsing.
Yeah. Maybe it's just another disinformation, but
It's
good thing.
it's a symptom. Maybe we can put it that way. It's at least a symptom of the collapse.
It's an open question, and I mean, this show is about to be confused. We don't need to know all the things. So now we're gonna go to the favorite segment of the strangers, the community of the show where we share the strangest thing that we saw this week. So I'm going to start with mine, which is, do you know this guy?
I've seen this picture, this image online this week, but I didn't check what this was.
You don't know what this is.
I don't know.
So this guy is Adam. Oh my God, I forgot the last name, but he's allegedly the creator of Bitcoin.
Oh,
You know?
Oh yeah.
So the New York Times released a research that they discovered who this person was. The problem is, that's not strange per se, because there are many people who claim to have found who Satoshi Nakamoto is. The strange thing is that nobody cared. Nobody cared much about the breaking news, let's say. For those who don't know, Bitcoin was released in 2009 under a paper published by an anonymous person who started mining Bitcoin in its own computer, and then it really grew from a niche community of cypherpunks. So basically, people who were trying to create digital cash, obsessed about privacy. So they wanted to have a currency that the government will not be able to trace. Now, the thing with this, and I wanted to bring it up, is because at some point we thought also during COVID that this was going to somehow be changing the world order for us. In Argentina, I was somehow a crypto believer. At that time, I was a banking capital market supervisor. And I was like, damn, we don't have proper banks. So maybe Bitcoin will be the solution for third world countries, you know? Then it was a total crap full of scams. You know, I ended up hating everything that happened around crypto. But one of the things that we inherited from this period was the technology that made stable coins possible. Coming back to your discussion, Jochem, I think that nowadays also the reserve currency status of the US dollar is in part upheld by the aggressive policy making that the US administration is conducting on cryptocurrencies.
Okay.
So the Genius Act, basically, that allows stable coins that are backed by the US dollars to circulate, that is a big part of this dominance, these attempts to reinstate this dominance. But anyway, I found it very strange that this guy was allegedly found with forensic techniques that I found also very strange. Like they basically analyzed the misspellings in the, hyphenation of this guy, and the journalist came to the conclusion that this is Satoshi Nakamoto. But nobody really cared. So I'm sorry for Satoshi. That was very strange that at some point we allegedly have this new promise that will change the financial system, and then it failed. It failed miserably, more than the left-wing woke people that tried to make the system fair under the period that you studied.
Can I ask you a question about the image? Is that his actual face?
Well, he doesn't have the thing in the eyes. I would assume.
No, I mean, no, but I mean, as in, do we simply not know what his eyes are?
No, we know. I think that this was the image that the New York Times created to make it more newsworthy.
Oh, okay.
So, Blaise, strangest thing that you saw this week?
Have you seen this AI-generated image that Trump posted on his social network, that came with his harsh criticism against the Pope?
Oh, he being Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me see if I can find it. Okay, what's your thought about this?
I was absolutely puzzled by how familiar it was for a historian. Like,
really?
I'm not at all a specialist of the interwar era or the 1960s, 1970s, but it looks like a propaganda image built for a cult of personality of dictators like Hitler, Mussolini, Mao, Stalin. Even today, you have paintings in the National Museum in China, in Beijing, paintings that celebrate to say like the work of the Chinese Communist Party in freeing China and implementing a new development model for the countries, and it really looks like this kind of AI generated image. And I was kind of surprised to see in the end that such a new technique in fact created
the same stuff we have it now here on screen.
The kind of display in fact we already saw in the past, which is kind of logic if you think AI works like they are building on previous on a huge database of images and everything. But for me it really struck me as a kind of direct poster of propaganda of Germany, of the USSR in the 1950s.
This segment of the strangest thing you saw this week is also to recuperate from the news cycle some things that are strange that you may have missed. I actually seen this, but I have no idea why he posted this.
And also it's kind of pathetic, but
it's true. But I just heard that he just got into a beef with the Pope. And that's it. That's the end of the story. Then he posts this image to say, I'm the real Jesus.
He does the same thing with Greenland, right? It's just things go bad on X, and then he'll post something on AI to really,
this is posted, on Truth Social.
Or Truth Social, excuse me.
By the way, after we finish the exercise, we do have to run the strangeometer to see which was the strangest one. We need to recover the ability to find things odd, right? But this is pretty normal. The guy is delusional in a way, right? I don't know why we get scandalized by this guy doing the same trolling.
It's really because you were talking about dictatorships. I think you're selling the communist. You're selling Trump a bit short by comparing him to the Chinese Communist Party. I think this is really like North Korea levels.
No, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You, Jochem, what's the strangest thing you saw this week?
So I have to be honest here. I came in thinking I was going to do more currency stuff. Because I found out that, and this is not what I will say, but just very briefly, I didn't know that the dollar dominance didn't last into the 30s during the interwar period. Apparently, the sterling came back before World War II. But anyway, then I thought, strangest thing of the actual week. I recently found out during the Hungarian election campaign, I think this is the more interesting thing to talk about now, that apparently one of the scandals, and we know about the scandals, but maybe this one I don't know if everyone heard about. Apparently, Hungary was the key country to make those pagers, which exploded back, was it 2 years ago now, all over Lebanon and killing a whole bunch of Hezbollah. Yeah. So it turns out Hungary was the fabricant of these pagers that on Israel's dime. So it was Hungary.
What was the scandal?
That they were involved in this, act of state terror, basically.
Okay, because it was kind of national secret that they.
Hungary?
It was not. Yeah,
that was a scandal that they were involved in the operation.
Exactly, and it was a state secret. Yeah, as far as I'm aware. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that was a scandal.
It's funny that you have to clarify it. We lived through such crazy times. This is a scandal.
No, but I saw that
That's a good point.
I saw that they made these pages, but okay, you
no,
really
they're specially manufactured pagers.
Okay, there was okay.
Yeah, but with the explosives, I do need to look more into this. In terms of that part.
Probably they needed to put the industry to work, huh? The guy said oh my God, we're gonna lose elections, so let's build something. Pagers, the Israelis need them.
That's turn up the pager factory from the 90s. Let's bring it back. Horrible. But it's I just what found it so strange news is maybe not strange, but it is strange because it's horrible. But it makes sense in the sense that Hungary is part of the architecture of global fascism, right? But to hear it so clearly. We study it, especially interwar people study this sort of thing about the interconnections between the different fascist countries. But we're living through it, and thank God that pillar is, at least greatly diminished now, for hopefully. There's a lot of false hope probably, but there's a lot of potential as well.
What a great phrase, false hope. is better than nothing, guys. Did you have fun?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts?
No, I just think that it's pretty weird, this stuff of pages.
Yeah.
You know, because like under Orban, you know, Hungary was kind of an ally of Russia. Russia, which is an ally of Iran, which support Hezbollah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, Hungary would have worked with Israeli
Yeah.
against an ally of the of Russia.
Yeah.
So I think now you give the good setup, Blaise, to set up the strangeometer. So how would you qualify this? I would start with the strangeometer.
Okay.
So I give myself a 7 because I'm too indulgent to my strange fact. Then I will give the highest scoring to Jochem's. I think it was like
Really?
a 9, a very strange development that I don't even begin to understand. Blaise, yours was a bit history relevant, but nowadays everybody claims to be Jesus at some point.
Yeah.
Right? So I would give it a 5.
Yeah. Okay. I get it.
I would have scored yours higher.
I don't know why. You know, I think it's because I had stopped, you know, watching the different posts of Trump in the past few months.
Strangeometer.
And when I saw this one, I was like, okay, this is really, you know, this is really weird. No, but this is such a weird spot.
Absolutely.
But no, I agree. I think I would give me a 6. You know, like
You have
We
your
cannot,
scoring.
You cannot normalize this kind of stuff.
I would have given you a 9, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Because for me, strange is not necessarily unexpected. Strange is just like,
Yeah.
what the fuck's going on? Why is this
Yeah.
happening? Yeah. Whereas at least with me, it makes sense in the sense that like, yeah, states gonna be states, you know? They're
Yeah,
gonna
but-
weird shit.
In your case, no. Yeah, I also agree that I would give Jochem the highest grade. I don't know if it's 9 or 10 or even 8. You know, but I would clearly give you the highest grade because this history of the story of like Hungarian pages being built like under Israeli command.
It's
crazy.
odd. Yeah.
So I think you're taking the strangeometer prize.
Yay.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming. See
What a great
you,
birthday
the
present.
strangers, in the next time, and thank you for tuning in again here. I think the next episode that we're gonna do is probably gonna be on AI and platforms. So stay tuned and thanks.